All right, so we are back. And we are live on all 5 platforms.
Great. We're reconnecting. Yeah, I'm seeing it back on Facebook.
Awesome.
Back
Awesome.
on. Actually, I can't see us back on Facebook. Okay, hopefully that makes it smoother too, because I was noticing there was a little bit of choppiness.
Yeah, it was chugging, right?
Yep.
My mouse
You know
cursor
what?
itself was chugging.
We gotta build you a stream PC, buddy.
Why?
Let's build you a stream PC.
I'm not
'Cause-
worthy.
I like the tone. Why?
Why? I'm so happy with my basic, medium powered. I don't want her to change.
No, she won't change. You'll still have that computer. You'll have an additional computer that
But
will
she'll
only
be
do streaming.
different. We'll see. I just don't have the budget for it right now.
You just don't like change.
I just don't like change. I'm trapped in this endless cycle of mediocrity.
Sure.
And I'm fine with it.
It could be a memory leak. I don't know. Because you didn't used to have this problem before.
I think it's really just because I was on the non-quick sync encoder. I've always used quick sync ever since we started streaming.
Okay. All right, then just go back to using quick sync or VCE, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that quick sync is the worst.
Well,
it's the literal worst. It's
what makes it so bad?
The quality that you get for the effort that you put in to making the stream look nice isn't good.
I feel bad now. Sorry. Okay.
But that's okay because AMD's only the AMD VCE encoder is notoriously bad as well. So neither of your other options are good.
So essentially, I just have a bunch of bad options for my encoders.
You had X264. X264 would have been perfect if we could figure out what settings you can use to stream without chugging.
Okay, next time, maybe I will take you up on building that streaming platform.
Yeah, if only we had unlimited monies, huh?
I know. Anyway, how are you guys, Bim, Jammy? You guys all good?
We're good. Well, I'm good. Sorry, I don't mean to speak for Bim. Yes.
All right. We'll transition back to the main scene.
Woo!
And there we go. Our cameras are back up. Your images are back up. And yeah, let's get back to the discussion. So earlier I mentioned before we before we talk about that, for those of you joining us just now, this is a very special episode of Table Talk about an upcoming event here in the Philippines. It's called Session Zero. It's by Gamers and GMs. For those of you who haven't heard of it yet, it is the first of its kind. It is an event showcasing all local tabletop RPGs by an all local cast of game designers. So 2 of them are with us today. We have here Momentos, or Bim, and Temporal Hiccup, or Jammy. They have been so gracious. And over the past hour, we got started talking about how they started designing games, what inspired them, their workflow, and we've kind of been dancing around this, touching on this concept of the experience of playing games. So, Jammy, what would you say? Let's pick one game that you're bringing over to Session Zero. Which game would you like to talk about the most? Let's start off with that.
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm being asked to pick a favorite child.
I'm so sorry to put you in this position.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, I'll talk about. I think I want to talk about Balikbayan first.
Okay.
Because that's what I'm really excited about. Yeah. So Balikbayan, it's not on itch.io yet. Mm-hmm. It's a Session Zero. And Patreon timed exclusive. Yeah, like I'll put it up online after the fact.
Okay.
So Balikbayan is basically cyberpunk But it's also like taking into account, I really love this whole like machine and magic sort of combination. So the players get to choose if they're going to be a tikbalang, a dewata, and a santelmo, or an aswang.
Okay.
There are like 6 playbooks to choose from, and it's based on the system called belonging outside belonging, and it's like, without getting too technical, I guess maybe this is the crowd for kind of technical, right? So
oh yeah, get as technical as you want.
yeah.
Yes,
So
feel free.
basically, it's based on Powered by the Apocalypse also, but it's an even more streamlined version, right? So
Ooh.
yeah, it started with the game Dream Askew. So you don't need dice, you don't need cards, you just need tokens. That's all you need.
And
And
that's the economy. You're swapping tokens with the GM or the narrator.
so what happens is, it's really interesting. I do have one game that's built on that system. It's called Our Haunt, where you play as ghosts inside a house. But basically, the way it works is each playbook, you choose out the typical description, like what you look like and stuff like that. But in Balikbayan, oh yeah, I forgot. I should talk about the premise just so that it makes more sense later, right?
Yes.
So the premise is,
Go
it
ahead.
takes place in the far future, and you like I said, you're like one of the elementals, somewhere between magic and machine, but your kind was enslaved by the corporation for a long time. Like, your magic is what fuels humanity, makes them comfortable. And so the elementals are losing their immortality. They're becoming mortal again, while certain privileged humans are becoming immortal and powerful. And so you start off escaping, and you're on the run, and you're back home, Balikbayan, you're back in a city, but it's been a long, long time since you've been there. And so you have to figure out a way to destroy the corporation, or to bring about the rebirth of magic before the corporation recaptures you, right? So there's like 2 clocks going on at the same time, and then seeing what happens. So the way that the token economy works is that each playbook has something that will there are 3 sets of moves. So there's strong moves, neutral moves, and weak moves. So you can always do a neutral move. You never need to spend a token for it. In order to do a strong move, you need to spend a token.
Okay.
And
so yeah,
go ahead.
I'm guessing strong, neutral, and weak. These result in varying degrees of effectiveness. Like, if you do a strong move, you get more bang for your buck. Weak move, it's relatively inconsequential, something like that. Am I on the right track?
If you do a weak move, you get yourself into a complication occurs, or you get into more trouble, right? Because it's very PBTA, right? Because the traditional D&D idea of failing a move is that nothing happens, right? You try to pick the lock, the rogue misses, the rogue fails the roll, and nothing happens. But in PBTA, you miss, and you could still get what you wanted, maybe, but there's a big cost to it, or things get really complicated, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just pulling up like Balikbayan so I can describe some examples for some of the playbooks.
Sure. Go ahead.
Let's see. Yeah. So for example, I'm looking at it now. So I think a favorite example of mine is the Saint from the playbooks. So the Saint, the idea was that I'm trying to like twist what the elemental was known for before. So a saint used to just worship or embody the miracles of one god, right? So it used to be the Catholic god, or whatever idea you have of it. But now what the saint does is they perform miracles, and they talk to the little gods in the city. So the gods that are left behind, the gods that are dying. And a lot of this is up to the player to decide how the rules work. Like it says in the playbook, that you have to co-create the rules of divinity with your game moderator, with your game master.
Okay.
And so, for example, one of the weak moves, I think I went strong with a strong move. So one of the strong moves is use your magic with unwavering faith. So every playbook has access to like 2 types of magic, 2 types of elemental magic that they can do.
Okay.
But one of the neutral moves is use your magic with consequence. So if you spend a token, that means you get to do the magic without too much getting in your way.
So not quite. It doesn't put you in a hot spot.
Yeah, but if you do the neutral move, it's like, there are going to be some consequences. But if you do a weak move, so one of the weak moves, for example, for the saint is to admit to a crisis of faith, or hurt or destroy a little god, act selfishly and place your needs above others. And then some of the strong moves are speak a true prophecy or lie about it, help someone regain faith. And so it's really interesting. I'm really happy about this system because you're no longer beholden to the dice, right? You can't blame the dice for things not going well. It's completely up to you as a player. I'm going to put myself in this awkward, weak, vulnerable position because I want to be able to do something awesome or cool down the line
later on. So you're trading like you're kind of a bit in control of the arc of what's going on for your character in the session.
Nice. and I like it because it forces people, I don't want to say force, it encourages people to like see the value in the story when things don't go your way necessarily.
Right.
And the system, like I really love it because there are no dice, there are no cards, so it's very simple, it's very straightforward. The funny thing is when I run this game for complete newbies, like who've never played an RPG before, they have a much easier time picking it up. They completely understand it. But
there's less to unlearn, essentially.
Yeah. But when I run it for people who play a lot of D&D or something, they have such a hard time. It's like,
oh my gosh. It's like welcome, young one.
Like you have much to unlearn.
You have much to unlearn. Okay.
Which is why the book's quite long, because I try to include as many examples as possible, just so that even if you're a veteran, it's easier to pick up.
How many pages is it clocking in at? What do you say?
Like it's in half zine format, half page. I think it's gonna hit 60 pages. It's currently like at 14,000 words, I think.
That's meaty. Nice.
Yeah. So I've been writing, going like, when's it going to stop? I'm not yet at the end.
So you're still continually like working on this leading up to August 25th.
Yeah. I haven't been sleeping, so I'm not kidding. I've been sleeping 6 hours. But my husband's very concerned. He's like, when are you gonna get off the computer?
Well, I hope. I hope you don't burn yourself out before the or get sick like before the actual date. But
but I feel like the game jams have trained me. Like I feel like I'm a marathon runner that's like done a lot of small races before session
it's the
zero.
Last sprint. It's the last stretch before before session 0.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, best of luck. To touch on like a few things that you mentioned. So in terms of the experience that you want players to have when when they're playing your game, or even the GM, like I'm guessing like part of it based on what you mentioned from the token like core mechanic and the setting, you want there to be like some kind of give and take of narrative control, right? It's like more of a conversation than rolling dice, right?
And actually, Buyin has the option to run it without a GM. Like if you just want to run the game yourselves, without a GM, that's also an option.
Okay, just a bunch of players sitting around taking turns, taking control of the story and stuff.
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is, like, even though I love being a GM, like I think I only started playing again more regularly, but for like so many years I was mainly the GM. But when I started designing games, I designed so many games without a GM. Or just a facilitator. And I think it's because I really want players to feel more empowered to be creative. Like I want them to, because the thing with having a GM role in the traditional sense, we're so used to all the creative control going to the GM, right? And so the players are just always just reacting instead of them volunteering aspects to the story. And I want to encourage players to do that more. That's very important to me in my games.
Okay, so player empowerment, sharing, narrative control. All right. How about you, Bim? Like for like one of the RPGs that you're bringing to session 0. Like what would you say is the experience you're going for? Like for both the players and the GMs. Like could you give us an example?
Okay, so one of the games that's included in my anthology is called What Dust Remains. So it's essentially a game about legacy. This is
Mm-hmm.
the game that that came about because I woke up one day and thought, "What am I doing with my life?"
Oh my
So
gosh, an existential moment.
basically, the question really is the design concept for me revolved around the question: how can somebody create a legacy without sacrificing everything that matters in their life?
Mm-hmm.
So that core concept is very strongly supported by the experience that the game hopes to provide, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically you start out young, you have so many opportunities, but as you grow older and older, and the pool of dice gets lower and fewer, you start
Okay.
getting into more difficulty. You start failing more, making more mistakes, growing older, and becoming less able to go back and correct whatever you did wrong in the past. So that was the kind of experience I was going for, and I playtested it with a lot of people who were
Uh huh.
very much. They were very tense when they
Did
were
it?
rolling dice. Their shoulders would be hunched up. They would be whispering to their dice as they fiddled it with their fingers and then throw it into the tables, and they would like go yes, success whenever they grow a positive roll for that encounter. So
Oh my
I hope I was
gosh.
able to provide the right experience, which was increasing tension as you grow in old age
I was
and
gonna go.
increasing
I was
yeah
gonna say like a game of like mounting existential dread.
Right.
yes exactly that's the game existential dread the game but yeah
Lichcast says in chat, like, is this your legacy game? Attention.
as attention
No. Regarding like, what you're saying about tension, rising
ah
tension, like as people age. Is this? Eric is asking, is this your legacy game?
Oh, for the
yes
game
yes it is
jam?
it
Yeah.
is uh-huh.
Okay. So you mentioned it's baked into the mechanics, like the experience that you want your players and the GM to feel. Um, it's represented by like a decreasing pool of dice as you go forward
Yes.
in age. Okay. So yeah. And you mentioned in your playtests, like I'm guessing you would say that you're pretty successful with that intended experience and design.
mm, yeah I think so
Oh well, we have the proof is in the pudding. Lichcast says, just returned. I can confirm how stressful it is towards the end of that game.
I
So
don't know if that's a glowing recommendation to play it.
it accomplished what BIM set out to
That's
make.
true.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's a success. I think. Um,
Yeah, and I think
can
in Bim's case, like, she really, really is dedicated to play testing the games as much as possible.
uh huh
And she works in the game continuously. I mean, we all do. Like,
yes.
I also annoy all my friends by asking them to play test constantly. But I would say that, like, because Bim like really focuses on very, very specific emotions, I think, and so it
Ah.
really comes through in her game. She's always play testing. She's always asking. She's always taking notes. Like, so yeah, I can definitely vouch for that.
Okay.
yeah
Okay.
On the
Just
topic of playtesting, do you
go ahead.
guys have a preferred, like, do you prefer to playtest it yourself? Or to throw it to as many friends, as you put it, Jam, to annoy all your friends with trying out the game?
Good
Or
question.
do you do both and then just have a different, you glean different insight from each process?
Yeah, Bim, do you want to take it first?
okay sure I think both. When the game is very fresh right out of the oven, I don't feel confident yet in sharing it with other people, so I play test it myself first. But when playtesting, you want to get as many experiences as possible, as many perspectives. So
Right.
I've also been trying to, in the past, I was formalizing the playtest experience by
Mm-hmm.
having a specific feedback survey form that the playtesters can accomplish so that I can also see what are the areas that I'm lacking in, what are the
Right.
areas that I'm strong in, and how can I address the gaps between those two.
If I may ask, like, for both of you, feel free to, any of you to answer. Like, on the topic of playtesting, what specifically are you looking for, like, from players? What do you want them to provide? Like, what kind of input is very valuable to you?
Mm. For me, it's a lot of different things. Like, at what point did you feel, did you had most difficulty? At what point did you feel that the rules were very streamlined and very work well with the game objective?
Mm-hmm.
Was there rising climax and tension throughout the game?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that there was something that you could add to the game? And
Mm-hmm.
of course, most importantly, did you have fun with the game?
Yeah, that's the most important one.
Right, right.
The fun aspect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even though
yeah.
you're stressed out, are you having fun from it?
Yeah, yeah.
Then
Is it a fun
yes,
stress?
it's
Fun existential dread. Yeah.
Yes.
But because I mean, because of that, I think because a lot of BIM's games, not all of them, but a lot of them deal with like difficult things, like difficult emotions, difficult concepts, and I
right.
think because of that, it helps people when they're outside of the game and they go back to their normal lives. It's easier for them to deal with it, if that makes sense.
So they
Like I
take a
think
little
that's it.
something out of the game experience that they can kind of apply to, yeah, to when they
Yeah.
face these tough situations in real life.
Yeah, I think so. But
Awesome.
definitely. But going back to playtesting, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with BIM. Um, I do like testing it myself first, only because I have like when I first created my first game, Cursed Children of Bathala. When
Mm.
I first ran it, it ran so badly. It was like
Oh
it
my
was
Oh
gosh.
dear.
it was so terrible. I still remember poor. So this one person, because my prejudice showed when I made the warrior playbook. It showed that I don't like them. I don't like warrior types. So the playbook was just a mess, and they
Oh.
were having such a hard time playing. And because like when you design, the way that it works in your head is rarely going to be how exactly it's going to work out. Like when another
Right.
person picks it up, right? So I think every time I design a game, I get better and better with closing that gap between what it's like in my head and what's it like
In
in
reality.
actual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to play test with people who are willing um to suffer first. Like that's the only way I can put it. I have close friends who are willing to do that for me. And then later I start testing it on, I try to test it on as different people as possible, like veterans or complete newbies, or people who are into the themes, people who are not so into the themes. And I try to record the session, and I take as many notes as possible while we're doing it. But in terms of specific feedback, what I try to get from people, I always just try to focus on like how they felt, because I think people are not, how do I put this? They're not always that good at knowing when a mechanic does something, if that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like in Masks,
Okay.
A New Generation, the
Yeah.
superhero one. So there's a mechanic in there. It's such a great mechanic. Your stats keep moving, right? So they're called
Right.
labels
Right.
because the way that people look at you, the way they see you, the way you see yourself, that's what makes you more effective when you try to take certain actions.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I so you can, as an adult, like when you're the GM, you can play an adult that's pushing around this kid's labels. When you say, for example, oh, you think that you can be a hero, you don't know what you're doing, you still don't
Right.
have what it takes, kid. And so you're trying to push down their savior label, and you're trying to push up their mundane label. And so if I talk to a random person, I can't ask, what do you think of this mechanic, right? They're not gonna really, they're just gonna tell me, oh, I felt I had to prove him wrong. I felt like, like I felt like a teenager in that moment where I felt
Yeah.
like I'm being told who I am and I know who I am and
Stamped
they
on
don't
by
know.
authority.
Yeah. So I always try to ask people how they felt, and then I'll see if the mechanic like supported that emotion or that sensation or that idea. That's what I'm always trying to go
Right.
for. Yeah. That's the goal, right?
Okay. So yeah, like it's I guess both of you are very focused on like getting an emotional response out of your players, um
Mm-hmm.
or just not an emotional response, like getting taking players for an emotional ride, right? Like
Yeah.
through games. So okay, that's a it's a very it's a very what um what am I evocative. Your games seem to be very evocative in that sense. That's nice. That's nice. Um, so you touched on like mechanics supporting that. Have you like I'm sure some mechanics didn't make the cut. Like how do you deal with let's say you find that, I think you mentioned this with like your fighter archetype, or for BIM, like some of your games had a lot of different modules that may not have been congruent with the experience you're going for, right? Do you find that these, just when they don't make the cut, like what do you do with them? Do you eventually use them in other games, or like do they? I'm just trying to get an
Mhm.
idea of, yeah, what happens
Yeah.
when a mechanic doesn't make the cut.
Yeah. Well, at first, I would. At first, I used to be really hard on myself.
Oh,
I used to
okay.
be like, oh, Jerry. Yeah. So like, but now I'm much better at it. Now, like you said, I do try to keep them I keep them in a document. It's called "It Didn't Work Out This Time."
That's
I just put
charming.
all the mechanics there. Yeah, because like you really have to be kind of like merciless with your own design, like you have to
Uh-huh.
really like um you really have to actually, like, this goes back, sometimes people will give feedback,
Right.
and like you have to like measure, is it feedback that's actually helpful, or is it feedback that
Right.
just speaks to their experience? Because not that you're downplaying their experience, but I noticed some people, for example, when I ran a PBTA game that I made, one of the feedback things I got was, oh, could you put something like D&D initiative, because it was hard when I didn't know when the enemy was going to attack versus when I was going to attack, right?
It's very different, yeah, from D&D.
And it's like, but the game isn't supposed to support that strategy, right? Because D&D
Yeah.
is really about like resource management, it's about
It
timing, it's about going over these details. But if so one of the games that's going to be at session 0 that I'm making, it's called
Mhm.
Become One. The idea is all the players play a fragmented portion of an AI, and they're part of the same mech, and they're trying to protect the pilot that's hurt and dying. And
What?
so,
Wait. So
yeah.
they are different, like it's an AI with multiple, with like multiple personalities.
Yeah, because
That's
each
cool.
AI gets attached to the pilot's emotions and memories. So you play anger, fear, regret, or love
Oh
in the
my
game.
god, it's
Yeah.
Inside Out but
Yeah, it's
mecha. That's so
yes,
cool.
yes. So it gets very, the game is really, you literally emotions. So it's very emotional. It's really fun playing that game because I love seeing anger and love argue. Or seeing fear tell anger, no, we got to get out of here, and anger is like, no, we can take them. But
Okay,
anyway,
okay.
but one of the feedback bits I got from people were like, well, maybe you can put in weapons, you can make it more mechanical. And I was like
Right,
thinking, I know where you're coming from, but this game is not, it's not about what type
right.
of guns you use, right? It's about, can can this AI survive? Can they become one and bring the pilot home? Can they help the pilot make sense of the emotions and the memories and the relationships they had before they die, basically?
Mhm.
So the weapons are not important, right?
Yeah.
So feedback is really essential, but I think for the designers out there, you also have to think about, is it really supporting what you want or what they think the game should be based on what they're used to?
Yeah, because
Right.
you don't want to fall victim to feature creep, or
Yeah.
even like being as game designers, you generally want to please your players, but you also have to stay true to the vision of the game that you wanted to craft in the beginning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right.
Kind of a balancing act there.
Hey,
Yeah, absolutely.
um JP, can you keep it going real quick, because I have some good news. One of our
Ooh.
guests can make it, and I'm going to
Oh
onboard
wow.
them
Okay.
Oh,
onto our
Yeah,
congratulations.
sure.
Discord group chat. So
Sure.
yeah, please excuse me. I'll just go ahead and do this.
Well,
Please go ahead, guys.
sure. I don't know how I'm going to continue it because I don't have the topic list in front of me. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be here in the first place, but yeah, let's chat a little bit more about
We can talk about
Yeah,
intention,
random
yeah.
things.
because I noticed that at least in your case, Jam, I'm not sure so much about BIM's games because I'm not seeing them on the stream screen right now. Well, I could go to your itch.io and check it out, but I'm noticing so far with Jam's games, um, a lot of them are like, or all of them indeed are themed.
Mm. Mhm.
So is that is that a big driving force for you to create a game? Like, do you have a theme in mind and then you want to make a game around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, because we're like used to games like D&D where it's very open. Like it depends what kind of game you want to
very
play.
sandboxy. You can go and do anything you want. You can ignore everything the DM prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Like I totally get that, and those games are very cool. Yeah, so the funny thing is about my games, I like to have a really strong theme first, a really strong idea, a really strong premise, because most of my games are good for 1 to 6 sessions because I'm like, how old am I? I think I'm 37. I'm 36 or 37, one of those two.
And you're 37. Okay.
I'm really bad at numbers. I'm not sure. But I think I'm 37. And so when you get, like, it gets harder to play campaigns with people, right? Like you play a few sessions and then people fall off because everybody's getting older, everybody has kids, everybody has family, everybody has responsibilities, everybody has work, like it's a little so a lot of my games reflect that desire to be able to have at least like a really good time, like 1 to 6 sessions. And sometimes personally for my group, I find it easier if we keep seeing each other because my players get excited whenever we use a new system or whenever we use a new game. It's harder to maintain if it's just the same game in the long term,
right?
For some players. So
I guess one advantage also of working a game around the theme and presenting that to your players is everyone is on the same page right off the bat. Like even before opening up the system and reading how the game is to be played, from the name alone, you can kind of get a feeling of, okay, this is the kind of headspace that we need to be in if we want to play this game.
Yeah. So it's a little more limited in that, but then at the same time, I really encourage players to be as creative as they can be coming from that point, right? It's like, so from there, it's up to them how they want to interpret things. It's up to them how they want to move the story forward. So I really enjoy running the games because each game feels super different, like really, really different. Even if it's the same people sometimes, just because it goes into a slightly different direction, even if the foundation was the same, even if the premise was always the same.
Interesting. And how about you, Bim? I noticed I have your itch.io open right now. I can actually see it's the same situation here. There's a lot of it is just extremely themed. You have an idea that you built on as the ground or the foundation of your game.
I think it's also very important to have a very specific, strong vision for your game, because that will inform how tight your mechanics can be, how well integrated the experience can be for your players, and basically inform what the player will get out of the game. Because of course they're just here to have fun, but there's also an opportunity to impart a message or a sentiment or a feeling that they can't get just from mundane experiences. So I think gaming is a very potent channel for players to undergo meaningful experiences that inform them of complex emotions, complex scenarios, and situations. And this is true whether tabletop gaming or video gaming, really.
All right. So I fully agree with that, and I think that's why you see like these trends where tabletop games, tabletop RPGs are being used in, in schools, not just as educational tools, but also, in counseling sessions, sometimes to help out even kids with special needs. And I think it's great that people are kind of starting to see the value of tabletop games, to contribute in that way, especially like to young people, but also, of course, for the older crowd as well. Like it works all across the board.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point about accessibility. Like one of the reasons I started to have less GMs in my game is because I heard from a friend who's autistic. She says it's easier for her when there's no GM in the game. Yeah, because if there's a GM in the game, she has a harder time focusing on the information. She keeps losing track of it. Versus if it's like very easy breezy, no one's really the GM, the story keeps moving back and forth. For some reason, it's just a lot easier for her. So
that's funny. It's kind of contradictory to me,
right?
In that sense.
Yeah, because for us, like neurological, like I don't know, baseline folks, it's just easier if it's one person, right? Where all the information's coming from. But yeah, and so I really feel like if there are more game designers, then it's easier to find a game that really suits you and your group, right? Like there are more voices, it's more diverse, there are more topics. So I just love to have more designers, really.
Yeah. And I think like you guys are getting a full leading up to session 0. Like all of you, I see everyone so active and inviting um not just players but also like fellow game designers to their playtest sessions. So the conversations that come out must be like really enriching, and like for you as well when you join someone else's table, right? You kind of get to see like what works, what they're doing, like what's great about their games. Like you guys, even just the two of you here um our our chat right now, like you guys seem to know so much about each other's games, each other's like
Oh,
styles of creating games and
yeah.
running games,
Yeah.
playing games. It's pretty
And
awesome
I
to
think
see.
like yeah, and I think the community is like I really do appreciate it. I think we're super, super supportive of each other. I think what really helped was Twitter, because like on Twitter it's so easy to talk
Right.
about and to connect to all these different gamers. But um yeah, and it's just I think like for example, I wrote the game Interim because it was inspired by Bim's Jigsaw Heroine, right? And so we do
Oh.
that a lot with each other. Like our games will inspire other games, or people will ask if they can. Like for example, all my games are written under Creative Commons so that people can just take whatever they want. They can hack or they can take wholesale as long as they credit me. It's fine. So because I just want to encourage more people to just take whatever they want and make stuff.
Yeah. And keep creating, right? Like keep the ball rolling, keep the momentum
Yeah.
going. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's awesome.
because I think Powered by the Apocalypse got that good because it was Creative Commons, because so many of the
Right.
Powered by the Apocalypse games are Creative Commons.
Right. Yeah. Like that's I think it's what really that's why you have such a rich palette of like Powered by the Apocalypse, Fate, even like Year Zero engine games
Oh
compared to like the
yeah.
singular flavor of more or less
Mhm.
singular flavor of like D&D that you get from D&D. It's yeah,
Mhm.
it's pretty good to see. Um well, let's see. I wonder if our next guest is ready to join. I think JP's helping get her on board at this point.
Yep.
Um let
You'll
me
be ready to refresh the Stream Elements background again, just so we can have our new guest's contact info up, or at least
Okay.
her Itch.io and Twitter
Okay.
handle up.
So the background, yeah?
Yeah, I'll let you know when to hit the refresh.
Oh, okay. All right. I hit it too early. I'm sorry. It's coming
It's
back.
okay.
I swear. Um is it coming back? Okay, there it is. So for a moment I was worried that I broke the stream again.
That's
So yeah.
okay. That happens like every stream. We should be used to it by now.
So going back to like this spirit of support that you guys have been talking about, like you mentioned it on a community level, right? So you're all helping each other out. You're all kind of playing in each other's sessions, inspiring each other. What about in terms of actual like platforms? Like where can you publish games for a local audience? Um, like you guys have made physical copies of your games. Like how are you doing that? Like in terms of printing and publish and getting a physical product out there. What do we have here in the Philippines that local designers like? What's available to you guys in your experience leading up to session 0? Let's start with Bim. Bim, could you tell us about your experience with regards to that?
Okay, so we can now, there's now a platform for sharing online games, which is Itch.io, which
Mm-hmm.
has been very helpful in getting the word out, getting views, eyeballs to come in and download your games. On the physical realm, it's a bit more tricky because the cost of publishing can be very high. I once asked around. A couple of suppliers said it would be 600, 700 for each book if you're planning a print
What?
run of 100 or less,
Oh
which
my
Yeah.
is,
gosh.
yeah, it's very prohibitive. But through some digging around, we managed to find a publisher who could offer higher discount rates. So that's what I'll be using for my books for session 0.
Okay, so it does exist. Like you can yeah, you can have your RPG, like an RPG that you made printed, like also on a limited run, I'm guessing. Like how many copies are we talking about, like in terms of a limited run?
Like maybe 30 to 40 copies.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, like I know that is this the same one that BIM is going to? I think they're gonna have a table at the event, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah, they're gonna be there, so it's gonna be. I haven't actually worked with them yet. I'm just going the whole print at UP route.
That's what I was
I'm
guessing
just
too. That's what people
yeah
did. How many copies are we talking
yeah.
about in terms of a limited run? Oh,
For let's see. Oh wait, whoops.
where did that
Hello.
audio come from?
Oh yeah, I thought we went back in time. That's
Yeah,
like.
that's Flashpoint. Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
But yeah, so basically I'm going to because like my problem was I wanted to like offer as many games as possible. So I'm going to try to do like 10 to 20 copies per game because it's going to be like like 70 to 140 copies then depending. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So uh and this supplier, I guess it's good that they will be there, at least in terms of, we talked about inspiring other um game developers to come out of the woodwork with their own products. And if you're
Yeah.
there, then like yeah, like raise your flag, and let the people come, right?
Yeah, and actually Itch.io is super workable because
Mm-hmm.
on Itch.io, even if it's just purely a digital download, I think if you want to get the most of Itch.io, you have to get on Twitter for sure. Like
Right.
the because like every single time I talk about my games on Twitter, I automatically get a sale. Like that's how
Wow.
and yeah, and on Itch.io they're actually really generous because most of my games are pay what you want. You don't even have to pay anything to download it. But a
Okay.
lot of people will still pay. So like and the nice thing about Itch.io is that what is just $1 to $10 in the States means a lot more to us here in the Philippines. So,
Yeah, it does. It's like
yeah.
it's such a a lopsided,
Yeah. I
lopsided
mean,
balance.
it's the least we can get with globalization and being a developing country that was taken advantage of by colonization. But at least, yes, dollars
This
mean
is
more
how
to
they
us.
give back, kinda. This is
Kinda.
they make up for it.
Kinda, just a little bit.
Just a
But
little
yeah,
bit.
so yeah, but I really recommend like just getting on Itch.io, just joining a game jam because game jams are great because you get to talk to other designers, other people are looking at your games.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like most people, even if I don't ask them to pay, they're still willing to drop like $3 to $5. But some people will like I had someone pay like $45 for one of my games that was free. So it
Okay.
was
That's
like
generous.
yeah. So it's like,
Awesome.
yeah, and then you just have to wire it up to your PayPal and then you can withdraw from a bank account. It's actually it's not so bad. Like I thought it was going to be hard, but it's not so bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it looks like Itch.io is the platform of choice, I guess, for independent game developers so far. Because,
Yeah, because they're more
yeah.
generous compared to Drive Through RPG. You can set
Mm-hmm.
something up there, but people won't really like it's harder
Oh,
to get people to pay. Like you'll get more people, but they won't pay for it.
I was wondering about the advantages of drive-through RPG, because from what I know, if you're on drive-through and if your product has the appropriate layout, it can go to
Mhm.
print on demand,
Oh
right?
yeah, that's
Like print
also
to order.
true.
I think that's their service.
Yeah, but we don't have it here locally. So, but in the States they could do it. So someone can
They
buy
could
it
do
in
it,
the
right?
States and it can go straight to. I haven't tried Drive Through RPG yet personally, just because number one, they take a bigger cut,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and the taxes are higher compared to Itch.io. Itch.io is pretty. Itch.io is like really generous because once again, because of colonization and
Mm-hmm.
globalization, if you have a TIN number and you're from the Philippines, Itch.io only takes like 15% instead of the usual 30%, and
Okay,
then
not bad.
there's just another, but compared to Drive Through RPG it's pretty high, like it's closer to 50% that they
Oh
take.
wow, okay. Okay. So yeah, the choice is clear.
Yeah.
From where I'm
Yeah.
standing anyway. Like
Yeah.
others might have different experiences. At least when it
Yeah,
comes
sure, sure.
to like people who publish in the D&D OGL,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah,
yeah.
I think if you're like, I think once you get a really big following, Drive Through RPG can can make more sense. But the Itch.io community is just really, really great and super supportive.
Awesome. On that note, I think this is a good time to introduce our third guest. So this is
Woohoo!
Maria
Hello.
Mison. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Hi,
Uh,
Maria.
Hi,
Hi.
Maria.
Hello,
Thank you for
Ate.
joining us.
um, actually excited.
Okay, let me just see if I can get your audio on my end. I'm gonna balance it with the rest. Why don't you, so I can, get a good sample? Could you introduce yourself to our audience,
Woohoo.
if you would be so kind?
Okay. Hi, I'm Maria. I'm kind of a new RPG designer. I've made like games. They're more on the artsy experimental side since my background is more on um story writing and theater. So I'm really fascinated by more
Uh huh.
other like cross references in terms of like answer stuff like that.
Awesome, awesome. So, you will be one of the you'll just like Jamie and Bim. Maria is going to be one of the game designers presenting her wares at Session Zero on August 25th in Green Sun, Makati. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're bringing? Perhaps like a couple of highlights, a couple of favorites that you will be taking to Session Zero.
Woohoo.
So I'm bringing Archangel Dating Simulator, the
Oh
good,
my
the bad,
gosh,
and
I'm so
canny.
excited for that one. It's a really good game.
I am bringing up your itch.io, but please go ahead.
Yeah, and wait, what was that one? Wait, I can't remember the last one. Wait.
Rich Kid Problems?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah. I'm bringing and Rich Kid Problems, which is like this PBTA style capitalistic critique. It's crazy.
It says here on your itch page for Rich Kid Problems, play the sons and daughters of warlords, mafia bosses, monopolist media houses, and your favorite corporate hegemony. That's right, be born filthy rich, trademark.
Yeah, so it was more of an exercise on because for me games are this super engaging media. Like
Hmm.
if you come from like a fine arts perspective,
Right,
people are gearing towards more participatory art, meaning the audience as part of the art.
right,
And then
right.
when you go to games, it's like that's the normal. So it's like freaking amazing because it's like what people are trying to get to, you're already there, you know?
Yeah,
Like
it's the
a lot
medium
of
that allows it.
so it's like there's like a lot of films that try to get people experiencing what systematic problems feel like or whatever.
Hmm.
But if you're engaging it with a game, it's more creative. It's less critique. It's more fun.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So when I wanted to humanize more terms of power or whatever, I wanted to create playbooks that showed both pros and cons of like being a son of a warlord or something. Because like I have a lot of favorite books where um quote unquote bad guys, they were more than just bad. So for all the playbooks on the rich kids.
Right.
Because trying to go for a okay, let's talk about these guys that we like hating on, and then let's try to make them human. Okay, just try to figure this out. It's like where was yeah? I think it's fun. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like the best bad guys are the ones you can kind of relate to, right? That have
Yeah.
a story behind them. They aren't just like cookie cutter, mustachio
Yeah.
twirling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the truth about bad guys is they don't think they're bad guys, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
right, now that we're all here, I wanted to ask. So we've been talking so far about things like sorry, is anyone is are we all still here? Audio all
Yep,
good?
yep. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
just
yes.
checking.
Hello.
Okay. So we talked about like how you started designing games, um like the experience you want your players to have through your games, support and platforms for publishing. Let's talk about let's zero in on kind of like what do you think the local game designer what challenges do you think they face, like specifically here in the Philippines? Like I'm sure it wasn't a smooth road, like on the road to session zero. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that you ran into obstacles. We'll take turns. We'll start with one of you, and then we'll kind of bounce ideas around. Um, but yeah, like what we'll start with any one challenge that you guys found in terms of trying to either like create your product, test your product. That includes feedback on your product too, and put your product out there, whether it's putting it up on an online platform or a physical copy. So you guys mentioned rates already, but yeah, let's zero in on those experiences. So why don't we start this time with yeah, Maria. Like what was difficult for you in this process of the road to session zero?
Hmm. Okay, in general, I kind of want to make more LARPs.
Okay. I think LARPs
There
are
isn't
don't have as much, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There isn't much of a LARP scene here, and I'm come from like a theater. I'm an apprentice in PETA, so I have a theater background.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of theater games. How LARPs codify and attack um like bigger concepts and like
Mm-hmm.
larger themes and a larger length of time, and it's technique based versus improv theater.
Right.
And it's like I want to explore that, but there's also the limitation that there's no scene here, and I think it's also language.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of students, because I'm in PETA, so it's Philippine theater, so we
Mm-hmm.
really pride ourselves in using local terms and local games and local stories. So I mean, even the local scene uses a lot of Philippine mythology and lore. So it's like harps, but at the same time, I'm like, how do I make this more intelligible to masa, or like,
Right.
how do I engage people to make it normal to make up stuff and do it?
Yeah.
It's not purely historical. Like, I
Right.
mean, I think that's such an old concept na LARPs need to be like a historical re-envisioning. Like,
Like a
no,
Renaissance fair type thing.
it's so
Yeah.
boring.
I feel you. I feel you. Um
Yeah.
so would you say that this lack of a scene for LARPs, like I guess did it like kind of limit like the games that you were hoping to make for session zero? So you kind of had to stick to the tabletop, a purely like tabletop genre
I wrote
medium.
some LARPs that are
Mm-hmm.
more micro LARPs, like you can do it by
Oh.
yourself or with like two people,
Uh huh.
which is closer to performance art.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also part of like the environment informs what art you make, what games you make. So given that, I think it's okay to react that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you want people to engage with it. So if you don't have as much engagement with that scale, like you could dream of wanting that scale, but if you're not adjusting, it's also kind of connected with what's available. So, yeah, so that's
Nice.
my opinion.
Okay. How about you, Jamie? Like, let's work our way back through you and Bim. What challenges came up? Like, specifically, like, so we have a lack of LARP scene for Maria. How about you?
Mhm.
Like, locally, what is lacking?
I think if I'm gonna focus on the local experience, I think what's it's like a two-prong, is that the right term? Two-prong problem. Like it has two things going for it. Is number one, D&D is really, well, this is like all over the world, right? But D&D is like the biggest RPG. And that's, so the thing is, if you're going to go for veteran players, for people who already play RPGs, most of the time they only play D&D or games that are like D&D, right? Like, I think Powered by the Apocalypse and other games are starting to gain more traction. Like my husband and I, we run an open table masks game every 2 weeks in Makati because I just want more people to play masks and like I want more people to have access to games. But overall, it's still like mostly D&D. So my problem is with the local community is if they're already playing RPGs, they have a hard time switching from D&D to more narrative games or to more focus games or to that kind of thing. And then on the other hand, locally, it's easier for me to, because Maria and I have talked about this a lot, because Maria and I are good friends also. So if it's locally, it's easier for them to get into the game if they've never played RPGs before. Like they just get it immediately.
They're
but then
a blank slate.
Yeah, but then how do I get to them also, right? So because it's gonna, I mean, I know that Gamers and GMs is pretty good at like getting complete newbies who've never played before into the event, so that's a good thing. But Maria and I are also planning on just running more games for people who've never played RPGs before. Like we're going to try to yeah, we're going to trick people who want to learn to read the tarot to play games. That's the current plan.
Games are really educational. Like they're at the forefront of pedagogy. So it's like it's not crazy idea to use games to teach. So it's like
for sure. Because like when I was a trainer, the best way to teach people prepositions on the night shift is to make a preposition relay, like is to make a game. Because if not, they're not gonna learn anything. So
how about you, Bim? Like, what roadblocks have you run into, like as a game designer in the Philippines?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a roadblock, but necessarily a challenge when you have a big sudden boom of a lot of indie game designers. How do we represent ourselves to the buyers essentially? How do we make sure that they don't drown in a sea of choices? I think the next logical step would be more game jams, curation of game jams, and basically making
like
sure
more
that
events.
More events, yes. Just making sure that we're not just basically throwing games into the abyss, that there's already audience for us and that we're able to leverage events, game jams, curation in order to make sure that our products actually get read.
Right. Efforts aren't wasted, right?
Yeah, because that's also something that keeps me up at night. It's like, who's gonna read this?
Yeah, but that's a new game there. No, I'm kidding. So like, but but it's true. And I think I'm really inspired by Malaysia, the Malaysian scene, because they're very active. Yeah, they're super active. In terms of like, they have a lot of local events. Like every few weeks, it feels like something is going on, and a lot of them also make micro games and they play each other's games a lot. So I feel like there's a lot to learn from them on how to go about it, because like RPGC is like RPG Southeast Asia is like they're doing a lot of work. And so, but it's so funny because like the Malaysians will look at us and say, "Oh no, but the Filipinos are crazy. They're way more into RPGs than we are." Like I feel like
there's that kind of
it's this like grass is greener on the other side kind of issue. I think they're way more intense. So
I remember one other challenge that might be of interest, which is pricing.
Oh,
how do you price your products?
How do we make sure that their efforts are well compensated? Because
but at the same time, not still accessible, right?
Not prohibitive for the local, the local customer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I still don't know any answers to it. Basically,
I was waiting for like the solution to.
Because speaking personally, I feel like I've gotten it more internationally. Like Like I'm pretty sure that people are okay when you price your games $5 to $20, depending on how long the game is or whatever. Like people are more willing to do it. Patreon also works really well, and stuff like that. But locally, I'm still figuring it out because right now, for the, let's say for example Balikbayan, it's going to be around 50 to 60 pages of a half-page zine. It's like going to be about 17 to 20,000 words, I guess. I'm going to price it at 500 pesos, but I'm also still worried, like, is that too much for some people? So what I'm doing personally is that I'm saying, okay, the game is 500, but you will get every future version of this game for free. Like you don't have to pay again. And then when it comes out in an official book in the future, maybe you just have to pay for the cost
of the
because you already supported the game from the start. Like that's my current path, but I don't know if it's gonna like, you know what I mean? I'm still I don't know what's gonna happen. But yeah, that's a good point, Bim. It's a really good point.
Yeah, I get I guess teased a lot because I tend to price my products very low. So
Super low. Are like,
price
really
them higher. But I also kind of want to make sure that people can pay it,
access it.
Yeah. So it's like, which one?
Yeah, actually, to be fair with me, when it comes to the PDFs, like on Itch.io, for the games that I do price personally, right? This is just what I do. I also put there that if they can't afford the game but they still want to play it, that they just have to message me, and I'll send them a free copy. Like
interesting.
Yeah, like especially if like there's some games that are very queer focused, like LGBTQIA plus focused, then I say, you know what, if you're gay, you get the game for free. Just let me know, I will send it to you.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so but it's kind of hard sometimes because people are like, especially in the Philippines, I don't think we're good at asking.
Yeah.
You know, like it's nakakahiya, diba? So like, I'm still not sure. So I'm still figuring it out. Because everyone who's asked for a free copy of a game, they're not Filipino so far. Like all of them are like from another country.
All of them, don't have that same what do you call this? That same psychological block when it comes to
right. Yeah, like I had to explain to a friend recently, like how if you want a Filipino to say yes to something, you have to ask them 3 times first. Because if you say yes too quickly, it's rude, right? So like,
Right. Like we have all that delicadeza thing going on.
Yeah.
So like aside from what popular genre conventions or the lack of certain genre conventions here, pricing is tough. We touched on earlier, like there's a larger community at work also, like in the Southeast Asia region. Like what's that like? Have you in the process of going on the road to Session Zero, like have you guys like reached out to them? Have they reached out to you? Like have you guys learned anything like from what's on the other side of the pond and stuff like that? Like what's that been like?
Ooh.
Or has that come into play at all? Like in your process?
For me, like it's a big deal because the Twitter community is really strong, right? And I get a lot of support from people like Ben, from Swords and Flowers, Rollover Play Dead. So usually, like what I do, like I reach out, I ask for feedback because they've had so much experience in designing stuff. And we also work on game jams together and everything. So, but I do plan, I think like Eric and Rachel from Gamers and GMs have more experience. BJ also went to Malaysia for a bit. So like, I know that they're taking a lot that they learn from how they're doing it in Malaysia and they're bringing it here also. Like I know one of the long-term goals is to have like a Southeast Asian convention.
Right. So it's to kind of bring this whole thing, on an even larger stage, right? For everybody.
Yeah. So hopefully it's gonna happen in a year or two. I'm not sure what their plans are.
It's Session 0 2020 going to be RPG SEA edition.
I'm hoping that would be so awesome. Yeah, because they make really great games too. They're super good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I've had Twitter threads like push me to making my games, because sometimes I think no one's thinking about this, and then Kazumi can like post like a really long thread about it, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, like okay, he's gonna get it, okay, and then he's gonna
yeah.
and I'm like, holy crap, okay, and then it's more of like you make the games for your friends and for yourself,
Yeah.
less about trying to sell it, because it's like, oh, okay, I'm trying to talk about this, but I'm gonna make it so that you receive what I'm trying to, like I'm trying to meet you halfway through this thing that we're dreaming about.
Yeah, because like Maria is like so beloved online by the art kids
Oh my god.
and the art RPG people. Like she has some fans. So
That's awesome. So basically, there's just a lot of support out there. I totally understand what you're saying. That, you know, it means so much when you kind of, like, just to be seen, like as a creator,
Yeah,
when it comes to these
exactly.
kinds of things.
Yes,
Yeah, so it's
Mhm.
awesome when
definitely.
people reach out.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
like it takes so much. I mean, I can't speak for Bim and Maria, but for me, for example, like it takes so many hours, it takes so much time and energy. Like that one sentence, that one mechanic can,
Y-
you're turning it in your head over and over again. Like it
You've
takes
lost
so much work.
sleep over it. That
Yeah,
one
or like
thing.
when I try to go to bed early, the muse wakes me up at 1 to tell me what to write down. Like, so it would be so sad if like you work so hard and there's no
Hmm.
one to like see it, right? Like there's
Right.
no one to like experience it. So I feel so lucky that our community is so supportive and there are people who are just really excited about indie RPGs. Like
Right.
it's pretty big. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess yeah, like what you guys have been saying, I think that you've touched on since the start of the streams, that Twitter seems to be a real powerful tool for for creatives, and like particularly in your case for game designers to find,
Mhm.
support, to find the community, to find
Mhm.
everything you need to kind of not just get started but to keep yourself going. Is that right?
Yeah. I would say start on Twitter. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy to get connections. Just use the hashtag RPGC, hashtag TTRPGs,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there get on Discord servers because that's where because right
Oh,
on Twitter we have that character limit. So
right.
at least on Discord servers, it's easier to get into discussions. It's easier to ask for feedback and stuff. So I would say like those two things, and then Itch.io, you're good. Like that's all you need to
Right.
get started.
Those
It's that
three:
easy. Yeah.
Twitter, Discord, and itch.io.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yep.
Okay. So
And
I can
unsplash.com.
And unsplash.com, yes.
for the resources.
And
Discord.com.
yeah, for sure.
So you guys, I've noticed this. I don't know if like you've incorporated this into like your process, but I've seen a number of people come up with their own like Discord servers. To kind of play test, to kind of collect uh what like players to test their
Hmm.
games. Like, is
Hmm.
this something you guys have done, or have you used other means like on the Facebook groups, on Twitter? Like, what have you done to kind of um get people to come to your playtest sessions and
Mhm.
source feedback?
I've tried both Discord and also Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So Facebook was actually interesting because I got interest from people who I wasn't very familiar with. So it was very good for playtesting because it's not the same pool of people again and again.
Right.
Discord I found was more good for getting in touch with friends that you already know and you want very intensive testing that you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable with if it were with a stranger.
Okay. Okay. How about you, Maria? Like, for your playtest sessions,
Oh, mostly
what
I
route
force
have you gone
her.
with?
Mostly I just drag Maria and I say, we're playing Archangel Dating Simulator today. No,
Actually,
no, but go
also,
ahead, Maria. Go ahead, Maria.
I actually also drag my dance friends to do it, so it's the perfect example of people who have no idea what RPGs are, and then just
Mhm.
go like,
You
"Sorry
kidnap them for
today."
like 4 hours one night
Oh,
to roll
those are
dice.
usually really short. Usually
So
run. Yeah, yeah. So they're pretty like they can run for like 3 hours or two.
Yeah, because they're so focused. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're usually just a few people, so it's just like 2 to 3 like that. Like I don't think I've made the game, like a game I'm working on right now is like max 5 people, and I want to cut it down to 3 because I really want so that it's like I could just get people and then they can leave and have like a satisfying experience. So yeah, I just grab my dad and like
Yeah, that's actually another good thing about Bim's games, because some of her games are like only an hour or two, so it's easier to like get people to play it. Like it's easier to get people on board, and it's easier for newbies and stuff like that. Yeah, because like when I try to get complete newbies into it and I explain that, well, masks and D&D take about 6 to 8 hours, they're like, "What? Why would you want to just sit somewhere for 6 hours?" You know, but when I actually get them to do it, they're like, "Why do we want to leave?" Like,
that's the secret
gateway
sauce.
drug of like a 1 to 2 hour, 3 hour game is like super important.
It's I do observe that too. Like the couple of times I've introduced games to people, the time commitment is usually the first hurdle, because when you're just scheduling the game, like what?
Yeah.
It's always what? And then they start backing out now.
Yeah, or there's traffic, or there's like it's so hard.
One of the things I found was that it was easier if your game was playable online.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that. Have you guys play tested your games like on a platform like what, Discord, Roll20, or even other like video or teleconferencing apps
on Facebook?
Yeah, because some of the games you can even just type out. You don't even need a vocal component.
So play by post.
Some of them you can play. Yeah, some of them you can do that. I know Bim does a lot of her games in Discord either through text or voice.
Yep.
Okay.
It's quite it's mildly stressful because you have to set it up. And if there's technical difficulties, it's like, oh no, what does this mean? This will affect their emotions and their impressions of the game. But so far it's been good.
Okay. Okay, so let's jump to one of the other topics I sent in advance. So now, like you guys have mentioned a few, I guess roadblocks isn't exactly the right word, but the challenges that you guys ran into on the way to August 25th. But what would you change, like, about what's here locally? Like, what would you like to see happen? You guys mentioned also that we have a few friends, the organizers themselves, Eric and Rachel, also BJ, who've gone to other countries, seen what works there. They're trying to bring it here. Like, what would you what changes for the better would you guys like to see happen in our local gaming communities, local gaming industry, that you think would encourage growth and more people to come out and not just play RPGs, but also make their own? Like, how do you make it a healthier place for RPGs locally, in your opinion? Let's start this time with oh my god, I'm lost. Let's start this time with Jamie. Why don't you go ahead?
Sure. I think I agree with Bim when she was talking about events and stuff. Like, I think that's the first real step. I think session 0 is really important, but session 0 is like it's kind of a big event, right? So I think I'd like to see smaller events that happen regularly. I'd love to see workshops. Like, I'd love to see, because that's what they're doing in Malaysia, right? So like that's what Ben does a lot. He has a lot of like, learn how to make a micro RPG in just 3 hours, and then you're done, right? So because I think once people start making the game, because like it feels so intimidating before, right? But once you actually do it, like what Ben said, it's hard, but at the same time it's easier than what I thought it would be. Like, you're just, because the great thing about, especially if you're going to go digital, right? Especially if you're going to go itch.io, you can always just update the game. You can always just tweak the game. So what's important is just that you start, like, you just have that first version out there, is more important than anything else. And that's what I would like to see. But I also would like to see locally like more of an openness to indie design. I think that's what I would also like. Um, yeah, because then that would make it easier for people to just design whatever games they wanted without feeling like I have to make the next D&D. Like I have to write 700 pages.
Right, right. Like what would you say just identifies indie design in terms of RPGs?
Yeah, I think to be honest, it's just anything that's not D&D almost, I think, because
That you don't need, 20
D&D is
sided
like,
dice.
yeah, because D&D is like the 800-pound gorilla, right? Like they're
Right, right.
super mainstream, they're on Stranger Things and all of that. So like
Yeah.
it's anything else is pretty indie by comparison. So
Yeah.
um but indie to me also means being open to lots of different mechanics. So like cards or things that are more LARPy,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. Like I think decoupling our idea of what an RPG game has to be, right? And then, like for example, there are a lot of great RPGs where you don't even create a character. Like you're just supposed to. I think a good example is like A Quiet Year, where you're supposed to like it's a macro level kind of game,
Yeah.
and you don't make
Zoomed
a
out.
character the whole time, right? But it's still
Mm-mm.
considered a role playing game. Like it's not really a board game. It's not. So yeah, that's what I would like to see more of, decoupling that idea of what an RPG, a TTRPG has to be.
Okay. How about you, Bim? What changes would you like to see locally? Uh,
Uh, yeah, I would like there to actually be incentive for people to create quality games. Like maybe there's something like a featured RPG of the month where people can vote for it. But secondly, and I think more importantly, seeing more events, yes, but also seeing them more outside of Manila so that we
Yeah.
can reach out to Cebu, to
mhm.
Davao, throughout the Philippines, so that we really are Philippine tabletop RPGs instead of being Manila
Just
tabletop.
vanilla. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, yeah. And I'd like to also add on one of Jamie's points about indie RPGs. So indie stands for independent, right?
Yes.
But we also have to think, what is it independent from? And I think that also
Mm.
comes with like tropes from RPG, um, independent of established mindsets, and basically being very exploratory, being
Right.
very experimental, being open to innovation. I think that's really what indie game design is about, really.
Yeah, couldn't agree
Yeah, that's
more.
true. Yeah, because like especially if you look at like Maria stuff, it's very very artsy. It's very very beautiful. It's very like it's super duper out there. And I'd love to see more games like that. Right? I don't like not every game has to be super structured. I think,
Right.
and you can still have a really good time, even if it's really open and indie. Yeah.
Right. Before we get to Maria, like we have a question in chat. Like, in terms of like making something that's live, like LARP-y,
Yeah.
um, we're assuming that's something that incorporates, more like physical acting and stuff, incorporating like, you know, um, not just voice narrating what your character's doing, more of actually acting it out. Did you get the chat get that right?
Yeah, yeah. Stuff like my favorite thing from Nordic LARP is this thing
Mm-hmm.
called Ars Amandi, and it's like trying to portray central consent through like the hands. So you
Mm-hmm.
just touch the shoulder and it means something. It touches the hand and it means something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Interesting.
it's so poetic that you could just move or gesture and you're already suggesting that the character did something instead of just narrating what the character did.
Right.
Plus there's
Right.
this whole aesthetic aspect of how did you hold someone's hand. So it's like you don't need to be an actor like full character. You just need to do the touching of the hand. But it already shows how much like you can communicate the heartbreak of a story because that the Arsamandi is usually for like super emotional, like couple stuff. So yeah, it's like that's one of my favorite because it's like it's so simple. Like people could do that. Like
Yeah.
normal people could role play fine. It's like so yeah. So that's what I meant by LARP. Like it doesn't have to be full on.
Okay. Okay.
You
Okay.
could do hands. You could
Yeah,
do
not like a full on like theater, like it
like
doesn't need those kinds
hands.
of
It really means
skills.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah,
need.
because the
Mm.
LARP scene is super big in Europe, I think mostly, no? Like they have so many ways to go about it. And I think it's been leaking bit by bit into RPGs also. Like
I
now
will.
support tools are more important, safety tools are more important. And
Yeah.
I think that started with LARP and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, the like the X card thing and stuff. Is that like where
Yeah,
the roots of it
I
are?
I
From
think so. I think so
Okay.
culturally, like it. I
Right.
mean, I don't know if the X card started. I think the X card really started in the tabletop scene, but I think it's because
But the
people started to
idea.
notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in LARP, it's way more important
Yes.
because
Yes.
there's more bleed in LARP, right? You're more
Yeah.
likely to feel the character, feel what's going on, and so there's more incentive to take care of each other, to make sure everyone's on the same page, to make
Right.
sure no one is being creepy, you know, like
Yes.
right. So, and I think that translated to RPGs, and I think that's another big step that we have to take more seriously locally is
Mm-hmm.
the idea of safety tools, the idea of support tools, because it does create better games. I think it creates better stories the moment you put in a support tool.
Right. For the benefit of like the viewers who don't know like what these are yet, like, and just so you know to further discussion on the topic, like what safety and support tools do you guys personally use? Like, if not with the games that you're bringing to session zero, in the games that you've run as GMs. Let's start with Maria.
I think one of the biggest support tools that you could give is actually co-GMing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Because in so okay, I'll just backtrack a bit.
Okay.
Because in theater, when people bleed through their characters, people just say "suck it up." It's like part of the art, just suffer like that. Like when I saw LARP, it's so much more healthy because they're taking people who aren't as artists, or like they're not like full to the brim with technique. They actually
Uh-huh.
take all these precautions on how to step out of character, how to thank the character, how to put distance, how to signal to your facilitator that you're having a hard time or that you don't want to talk about this. It's like,
Uh-huh.
and you just say that, "Oh, okay, I can't handle this, or I need to step out, or I want to end the scene or something like that." So it's like
Uh-huh.
I was really shocked because like coming from theater, I was like, "Holy crap, they fixed it!" Like they
they've
fixed it.
solved the thing.
Do people not know that that the game scene has solved all of our problems? It's
Yeah.
like so I was like, damn, it's so brilliant. So I was like, so what's weird is that when I do my games now, I incorporate a lot of safety tools that I learned from LARP, even if it's a tabletop game. So like in LARP, it's common to have more than one GM facilitators so that you could keep eye contact with both, stuff like
Right.
that.
Right.
And it's like they also have this, like it's really common for them to what do you call this, to suddenly go omniscient, like you just zoom out and like talk to the table like, okay, where are we actually going with this? It's like they really encourage group work. Like they even say play to fail, like
Mm-hmm.
don't play to win, like play to have like a good time,
Right.
like for everyone to have a good time. So it's really encouraging everyone to just be more empathetic because it's like a collaborative storytelling. It's not you're trying to like look great. It's not that. You're
Right.
doing the story together. It's like a partner dance. It's like you need to mesh. So it's coming from that viewpoint. If you write stories that support that, and then
Uh-huh.
you what moves that are more collaborative in a sense that reward sensitivity, it's more like, I mean, for me it's more fun.
Cool, cool. And I don't want it to sound like we're like ragging on D&D too much, but I feel like a lot of other RPGs kind of incorporate that concept you mentioned. Failing forward, making failing fun. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I find. Our other RPGs do a lot better than default D&D. It's because you can do it in D&D, and good GMs do it in D&D,
Right, but
but
it's not built into the
yes,
mechanics.
it's not
Right,
built into
right.
the game. How about you? Let's go to Bim. Bim, like what yeah, safety or support mechanisms do you use in your games?
I think the most important concept for me is the session zero, which is event,
The
but
eponymous
also
session
the
zero.
but also the expectation setting, and also a necessary dialogue, like what do the players want from this game? What does the GM want to provide to them in terms of experience? So early on, the expectations are already kind of aligning, so that if anything bad happens later down the road, they know that, okay, we can calibrate, we know how to go back to our previous agreed space. And in addition to that, I also prefer the X card because of its simplicity. Sometimes I even say the X card doesn't have to be a card, it could literally be any object in the room.
Or a gesture.
Or a gesture, yeah. Yes. And you don't have to know why. You don't have to get interrogated. Why are you feeling this way? Why are you doing the X card? With an open table, it can just be a signal for them to say, okay, it's time to reevaluate and see if we want to continue forward with this narrative. Right. So that's it, session 0 and the X card for me.
Okay, how about you, Jamie?
For me, like, support tools and safety tools are like super important because I used to be one of those players, right? I used to be one of those GMs who were like, nah, just suck it up.
It's just
I used
a
to be
game.
one of those for sure.
Yeah. We've all heard that. I think. It's just a game.
Yeah. It's just a game, don't take it so seriously. Don't be sensitive. And the thing is, I do like running horror games. Like, I love horror games. Right. One of my favorites is Bluebeard's Bride, and stuff like that. And so, but when I started seeing the conversation online about safety tools, and I started reading more about it, I started reading articles about it. I admit I just forced myself to use it at first. Like, it was really uncomfortable at first because, I had been running for so many years. I was so used to not having it. I had the mindset of, oh, everyone just knows how to be a decent person.
But apparently,
and the thing is, I should have realized more, because as as a woman, like, there's a lot of, well, anyone who's marginalized, right? Any one of us who's like gay or a woman, or as long as we're not like straight white dudes, let's be honest. There's a lot that we put up with that we don't realize. Like, there are a lot of these microaggressions, or we're just taught to be uncomfortable and to put up with it for the sake of the group. And I think that especially applies in the Asian setting. I think we're more likely to just shut up.
To avoid conflict.
Yeah. And like, so for example, I'll talk about an experience where I didn't feel great when I was a player, because like I said, I'm usually like a GM. So as a GM, you also have technically more power than everybody else in the traditional sense, right? Like, you have more say in what happens. So I was a player, and in the game, I was playing Apocalypse World. And then in the game, there was a part where you can use a move to try to like turn someone on and stuff like that. So I tried to do that. I failed the roll, and so you're not there's a complication that's supposed to occur.
Right. Yeah.
And so what the GM said was, okay, so someone slipped something into your drink, and
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then and like and like I'm laughing now, but it was horrible, right? And in the moment,
at the time, it must have been super.
And I was so shocked. Like, I didn't know, I couldn't respond, right? Because I just went into the mode of, okay, just don't make a big deal out of it. Just like, and then what was worse was the other players were telling the GM, that's not cool. Like, you shouldn't go put something in her drink. Like, it's gross.
Yeah.
And then what's worse was the GM defended himself. He was like, no, it's okay. I mean,
it's Apocalypse World.
Yeah. And, she missed the roll, and, he was being so defensive, and I just felt so bad. And like, the rest of the game, I couldn't focus.
Right.
Because I was so terrified that something was going to happen to my character, because she was passed out. Like, I couldn't control what was going to happen to her.
Right.
And so it felt really bad. And the thing is, like, because there were no safety tools in place, there was no way to talk about it. There was no way to just stop and pause and say it's not cool. So, and then, so ever since then, I've been like really more careful about support tools, like having experience it myself. And so one of the ones I like is the X card, like Bim mentioned, but I've seen some writing online. So for the people who don't know, the way that the X card works is it's very simple. You just draw an X on an index card, you put it in the middle of the gaming space, and then if something happens that you, like when you want to take a break, if something happens that you're not comfortable with, so in that case, let's say because we were playing online, I could have just typed the letter X.
And that would have counted. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have counted as tapping the X card. And then that's a moment to like say, okay, we're just going to remove it. It's not going to happen. Your drink doesn't get roofied, basically.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen to you. You don't have to deal with a date rape drug. But the problem with the X card for some people is that it can be even more traumatizing because sometimes people need a chance to talk about it, or they need a chance to they need to have more tools. So I like to combine the X card with this tool called the script change, where you can choose to fast forward. If you just like, if for in that example, let's say if I had chosen fast forward, I would have said, okay, I'm fine with my character getting roofied. I'm really not fine, by the way. But okay, let's just say, for example.
Yeah, for the sake of
for the sake of example. Let's say, okay, I'm okay with being roofied, but can we not go over the details? Can we not say what happens to my character?
So like a fade to black, or like a screen transition.
Yeah. I'd skip to the next part of the scene. You can also there's an option for a rewind where like you like, even though it's been several scenes later, you can say, you know what, I realize I'm not okay with what happened. So can we change it into something else, right? So I like to try to offer as many options as possible. But I also try to build it into the games, because what I used to do was I would just provide a link to the safety tools available.
Right.
And people can pick from there. But I find it's better if it's built into the system already. Yeah, if there's a way to do it. So I try to do that now for all of my games, where it's built into it. And like Maria said, the more narrative power you share with everybody, the safer everyone gets, because it's not just one person who's saying, no, drugs are okay in a drink for a girl. Like, it's like, because in that situation, if there had been more GMs, they could say, yeah, no, dude, it's not gonna happen.
The power of, like level heads and good voices is amplified. Like the more you share, control.
Because I don't blame the GM either, because it's very easy to get defensive in that moment, right? Like, you realize you made a mistake, but you don't want to look bad in the moment, so you just sort of like dig your heels into the dirt instead of just being like, oh, okay, let's remove it. But if you have the safety tools in place, it makes it easier. And the irony of having safety tools is that I now have more extreme games.
Because now it enables it.
Yeah, because people feel safer. They're like, yeah, let's go. Because they know that if someone's not comfortable, it can immediately stop, right? Yeah, I also use lines and veils, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So it's what you say beforehand that you're not cool with. So for me, I'm not cool with animal abuse, or animal death. I'm okay with human death,
right?
But not animal death.
I think to expound a bit, for those at home, so lines and veils, lines are things that you never cross. Right?
Yes.
And veils are things that you kind of, like, if it were a scene, it's the rating, like what you fade to black for.
Yeah.
Or what you screen transition out of. So yeah. It's an excellent tool. It's something I also tend to use in my own games, especially with people. JP, I mean, us, like, we know each other really well, and we don't tend to use it in our gaming group. But
an X
when
card
I run
in our group, because we know what triggers each other, which usually in my case is nothing at all.
But when I run for
strangers, the X card is a tool that you can use to actually increase the amount of fun in case of especially with playing with people who you aren't familiar with.
Yes.
My
gosh, it saved my ass a couple of times. I
think played in games with X cards in it, Mark?
I've played in games where I've used lines and veils. I feel like X cards can. One of the drawbacks of X cards is that people, do hesitate to kind of grab the card.
Yeah, because it's so it's such a big red button, right?
Right. It can have, like, it's so off tangent, but I just read about this. It's ironic that it's that same effect that the wearing helmets has for bikers. Like, it can increase, statistically it makes you safer from head injuries, but it can also embolden like more reckless biking because you feel like you're safe. So it's that, like, the X card also kind of people don't want to grab it because it's such a big deal. So I feel like lines and veils, for me, in
And
my experience, is a
it's
better
putting a
tool.
spotlight on yourself
Yeah,
to invoke the X
Yeah.
card.
and like
Yeah.
for some
True. True.
personalities, it doesn't work.
Yeah, for a lot
Um,
of us, yeah. And I think what's important is to find the right combination per
yes,
table, right?
yeah.
And to be willing to throw it out like so
If it
every time
doesn't
I
work,
run a
yeah.
game, yeah, every time I run a public game and I bring out a support tool, everybody looks so shocked. They're like, "What is that?" Like, but then as we start to get into it or we play, I really feel like people get how important it is and how
Yes.
helpful.
Right, right. So yeah, like just to go back to something we mentioned before in the stream, it's I feel like another advantage of having these things, these safety and support mechanisms in games, is that because games are educational, you're really kind of teaching also like through play a lot about consent and a lot about not being a
Mm.
dick.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Because despite what we think, it's not natural sometimes. Like we just don't
yes,
know when we're being a dick, so
yeah. Sometimes
That's the
like you
problem
really do need
sometimes
it
when you're
spelled out.
playing with a group that you're too comfortable with. Is
Like,
and it kind of spills over into when you're playing with other groups.
yeah, true. That's a good point.
I think
yep.
it also encourages like other than just consent. I think it's collective vulnerability. Now you're encouraged
Yeah.
both around each other because I think, especially for emotional games or for like very quote unquote intense like stories, or like at least if you are a character, you need to go to the dark so that you could fetch the light and like fetch like
Right.
fish it out, right?
Right.
So it's like people won't go there unless you tell to each other as a group that, hey guys, we're gonna go there, but we have to be like safe and take care of each other, which is like a
Right.
thing that's kind of not taught that much.
Yeah.
Like
That's so true.
taught to take care of each other when you're like going to the dark, like going to these dark stories, these dark traumatic like narratives like Bluebeards. But it's like it's such a important experience to like learn and like have.
Right.
Like I think it's one of those things that if you don't have, it's like, oh my god, you're screwed. So it's like
Mhm.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, going back to Bluebeard's Bride, like I just want to say because that game really inspired me in terms of building it into the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, the Bluebeard's Bride does recommend the X card, but aside from that, number one, you're supposed to tell so people who are not familiar with it, Bluebeard's Bride is based on the fairy tale
Mm-hmm.
about the woman who marries this dude whose wives keep mysteriously disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the original,
How mysterious.
yes. And in you're supposed to actually tell the fairy tale before you start the game. So in the original fairy tale, they go to the mansion and he says, "Everything I have is yours, but this one room, do not enter it." So of course, she goes to that room eventually, and she finds all the previous wives there. And then it ends with him killing her. And the moral of the story is to not disobey your husband. I'm not joking. That was the original moral of the story.
Of that
Yikes.
fairy tale. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Now the moral is don't marry a serial killer. But back
Yeah.
then it was
That is the more important takeaway.
yeah. Or don't kill your wives. So anyway. So in the game Bluebeard's Bride, you tell them from the beginning that it's gonna be a tragic story. Like it's gonna have a
Right.
tragic end.
Right.
There are different variations. You might survive physically, but emotionally, the bride is not going to be in a good place either.
Right.
So everyone plays the bride. So they all play up an aspect of her. So the virgin, the fatale, the witch, the mother, the animus. And that's the first safety rule because everyone is playing the same character. You can't
Yeah.
physically separate yourselves from each other. So that's the first safety rule. And then the second one is, I guess the very first one is about the tragedy. You have to tell them from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the third one is there's a move called Shiver from Fear,
Mm-hmm.
where if the GM senses that you're really afraid, the GM asks you, what is the worst thing that can happen in this moment? What are you most afraid of? And then that person will
Mm.
say it, right? And in releasing that fear, it helps instead of just keeping it tense. And then the rest of the move is the GM tells you how much worse it is. So
Whoa. Okay.
And when I
That is
run,
interesting.
That's kind of mean.
It's such a, but it's really hard when I run that game because sometimes the players will come up with stuff that's way scarier than I thought. And I'm like, how do I make it scarier than what they thought? So
Kind of makes you also reevaluate the people you're gaming with, na? Parang like, oh my gosh, what are
There should be
these
a counter
people?
to like if the player says something that you can't come up with something that's more terrifying or more horrible, then they become the GM.
but it's really cool because because of that it makes it more fun because you're really enjoying the horror aspect,
right?
And then and at the same time there's also each bride carries the ring. There's one ring, and whoever's holding the ring, she can make that part of the bride can only make certain moves. So if it's too much for you, you can pass the ring to another person.
Right.
You can say, I'm done, I don't want to deal
I know.
with this.
Nope, you can nope out of it and just pass it on.
Yeah, so there's so many safety tools within the game that even though it's really terrifying, everyone is safe the entire time. So
my gosh.
Yeah, it's a really great game. It's super good.
I want to check this out. Like my biggest takeaway personally, like I'm really appreciating like us having this roundtable. My biggest takeaway from this is that it's like with the like all tools, mechanics, these are pieces of kit. It's gear, and you wouldn't scale a mountain or you wouldn't like jump, go skydiving without the proper gear. And that's what makes games exciting. Like you're able to kind of up the ante, up the stakes with the right not just the right mechanics, not just the right design, but the right safety tools also. That's what lets you get into a more varied landscape when it comes to your games.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. Yeah.
My gosh, I learned something. Thank you so much. All right. We are nearing the last stretch of our stream, so we've got like a couple of more things to talk about, if I may. So you'll be releasing the game to your games, in the case of many of you, to the public real soon. So it's coming up. I know you're all excited, but like looking past that, like after you've released the games on August 25th, like what's the next step for you guys? Like I know we've talked about community building, um making more incentives for people to make better games, but like personally for you, like what happens after session 0? Let's start with Bim this time. Bim.
I was afraid you would pick me.
Okay, sorry.
Oh no! I
Is this
had
the X
no
card?
idea what I was
We're
doing.
X-carding that. Okay.
Would you like
no,
to
it's okay.
X-card
It's
that?
okay. No, it's okay. For me, it's basically make more games.
Just keep on going.
Yeah.
All right.
But it depends because now that it's possible for me to make physical copies of my books, it's feasible also for me to set up an online store for my games in my website, or that can deliver hardbound books or bounded books to countries, hopefully internationally. Maybe it's ambitious. You'll see.
But like you said, you guys have found a supplier, right? Or a printer that makes it more feasible. So kudos.
It's a big step.
Yeah, it's a huge step. How about you, Maria? What would your next step be?
Make more games. Yeah,
just keep making games.
And I want to design more for like. It's kind of like what Ben's doing, where he's teaching other people how to make games, but I kind of want to do it for like. Wait, let me find my words. I want to do it for a not necessarily tabletop audience. So, for example, more teachers teaching through games, because that does that.
Yeah.
Our whole curriculum is games. So me going to tabletop is more of like, yay, more script. But it's like I just want people to know that they can design their own media, they can design their own experiences, they can like design their own spaces and have it with their classmates. Because if you have like classmates when you were younger, all the media that you had were all thought up somewhere else. It's not really yours. Or like we used to have an oral tradition of like that we pass through generation, but this time it's more of like it's this mass market craziness. So I kind of just want people to regain their voices in terms of like, oh no, okay, let's just make up like we did that when we were kids. We would make up stories stuff. So it's like I want them to know that you can do that even when you're older, and that I think it's needed even more now. There are people who like kunyari EGK, or people who like it's so cathartic to out there, and a lot of the stories are archetypal, like the Bluebeards, like who wasn't chained by a master, who wasn't caged. So it's like get that seed of like games to like use these lived experiences through story, through movement, through whatever, to like set yourself free. Like that'd be, bro, that'd be mind blowing. That'd be fun. Like
That's the arena you want to work in post session 0. Nice.
I mean, yeah, I mean, generally that's what I want to do with art. And I think that games have, at least written games. I mean, there's like oral tradition's great, but the level of detail that you can get with like a designed experience. Ben has this game about grieving that I really like, and it's like it's super nice because it's like who didn't lose anyone. So it's like so I'm like, if you can get people to talk about these topics in like a fun, safe manner, and like it's not, and it's taken seriously but at the same time in a healthy way, I mean it'd be so better. Like it'd be, yeah, it'd be better. I hopefully, like in theater I could integrate some of this stuff, but for now I'm just happy making like artsy games and like publishing it on itch, like whoever's like looking.
I am.
I know. Yeah.
I bet I hope that come session 0, like you'll see like the interest in the kind of games you want to make. I mean, it does sound interesting. It does sound like super a great way, like you mentioned, like how like EJK is the like what it's currently like in our country and for other people around the world too. Like I think last year you saw the birth of games like Sigmata, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
very politically
This
charged
No Kills
games.
Fascist. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so good. It's a really good one.
I haven't played it, but I've read about it.
Oh, let's play it. Let's play it.
Okay, yes. I would love to.
Very
Thank
much.
you.
I will always enable people to play games. So I will run the game. You will run the game. We'll make it.
We'll do the rounds.
Before we play any other games, though, we should probably play the games that you guys are going to be showing off.
Oh,
We
awesome.
should. We really should. So, how about you, Jamie? After session 0, like, what are your plans?
So for me, like I totally agree with both Bim and Maria, because I'm going the zine UP print route. So I want to try publishing the games like with a real book printer after session 0. I also want to work with Maria and other people to like set up small regular events to get more people playing all these different kinds of games. I want to hopefully figure out a way to set up how to make your own games, because at the last GNG at Lacuna Con, I ran a workshop about how to make your own tarot-based RPG.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and people liked it, but they were all like, "Oh, it was so short. We needed, So now I'm thinking maybe I should have a longer one. Like maybe
that was exactly my feedback. I attended DJ's workshop on creating magic systems.
Yeah, and it needs to be longer, right?
It needs to be longer. It needs to be so much longer.
Yeah, it needs to be the whole day. Like it could be a really fun thing. I think if we could have a whole day workshop event where different designers teach, that would be super fun.
Right.
And I think, but like everybody else, I want to keep making more games. Like on Twitter, the other month, I saw someone say, "Yeah, after I make this other game, I guess I'll have nothing left to say and I'll be done designing games." And I was like, "How can you reach an end?"
Keep telling yourself
started. Yeah, because once you get started, it's super fun. It's the most fulfillment.
Right.
I've had. Like, I love being a professional tarot reader. I love being a teacher and everything, but being a game designer is the most fun I've ever had. It's the most fulfilling because it's so nice just to have something that you worked on that other people can enjoy. So I'm definitely going to be making more games. But yeah, I think what I would also like to do is to set up a local collective, because what people have been exploring online
Yes.
is that it's hard to be an indie designer on your own. It's hard to get the
Yes.
money for it. But what if you have a co-op? Like, what if there's a group of you and then you support each other and the money pools, like, and then
Yes.
you work on stuff together? That's what I also want to like look into, like having it, because people are talking about it internationally. I'm being invited to join some, but I would like to have it locally, like that's what
Yeah.
I would like to do.
Homegrown.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think that's on that point. Like that's having a local co-op. I think that's one of the most important things that game designers can do here. Like get organized, get a band together, bring stuff out, and like also that leads the way forward. I think Bim mentioned really early on, like incentive for creating excellent
Mhm.
products, right? Like
Yeah.
that's one way of incentivizing that, because you don't wanna lag behind your peers, especially if you're working so closely together. You want to be able to put out like awesome stuff.
Yeah, healthy competition,
Yes,
healthy
exactly.
support.
Healthy support.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think most of our viewers are lurkers. We didn't
Huh.
get a lot of questions. For I was hoping like the last hour could be something of a Q&A,
But we do
but
have plenty of viewers across the various platforms that we stream
yeah,
on.
mostly Twitch.
Hi.
Mostly Twitch right now.
Mostly Twitch again, of course. I mean, that's the one that we pimp the most. So
Yeah. But yeah, I want to say again, like, thank you guys so much for taking, I'm sure it's a scramble leading up to session 0. Like, this is time you could have spent tweaking your games, adding a little polish, but you've gone and spent, like your valuable time with us. We really appreciate it.
oh yeah,
And we really look forward to meeting you guys on August 25th too. We'll be there. We'll do the rounds. We'd love to do another round of like, featuring everyone at the venue itself.
and
Yeah,
maybe even get a chance to play.
Yeah, that'd be so great. We're all gonna be running demos.
Yes. It'll be fantastic to see you guys there.
we look forward to it so much. Like I think we've mentioned it a couple of times. We had before starting Dicecast, we had no idea, honestly, like that there was such a large tabletop gaming community, locally, and like working on this, it's led to us meeting people like you and people like Eric, people like Phil. It's been really cool, and yeah, like we're really happy to have met you guys and to have featured you on our show. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna start gaming together. That's the most
That
that's the
too.
most important part.
More games, more fun. So I think we will draw this stream to a close. There are a lot more game designers coming up next week at our roundtable. And I know that there are some people express their interest a bit late in the process. We will find a way to include you guys too. So I will be in contact with everybody soon. We want to give you guys as much coverage as possible, yeah, as our humble outfit can give. So yeah, we'll be in contact. Even if it's after session 0, if you can't find time before August 25th to fit all of you in, we'd love to get to you at some point. Yeah, and promote your games, promote your creations, and yeah, just help out. So um, you can follow. Let's go one by one. Where can our audience find you guys? Where can they find your games? Let's go from top to bottom. Let's start with Bim. Please go ahead. Let everyone know.
All right. So for games, you can always go to my itch.io page, momentos.itch.io. But for everything else, for art, for illustration, layout work, graphic design, I have a portfolio site at momentos.com. And if you would like to go to session zero, I could also pitch you more about the games I'm creating, which are all designed to be accessible, explore very themed topics, and there's also one generic system that you can run in any setting whatsoever. So that's it. On Twitter, I'm also on as Mometos.
Awesome. How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, so people can find me. I'm super active on Twitter as at Temporal Hiccup, like time hiccup, temporal hiccup. My Itch.io page is also the same, temporalhiccup.itch.io.com. And yeah, I think Twitter is the easiest way to follow me, because like that's where I post the games that I'm working on as I'm working on them. That's where I like to engage with people the most about RPGs. And at session zero, I am hopefully we're gonna see. I'm gonna make it past the finish line, offering 7 games. Yeah, so yeah, Maria's helping me. Maria is being super helpful. Maria is like my savior. She's helping me with the printing. So basically, I'm gonna be offering 2 sci-fi games, Balikbayan, Become One, and I'm offering some very gay games like Take My Revolution, which is based on Utena, and
Utena?
also
Okay.
yeah, Revolutionary Girl Utena, and then Their Love Destroyed This Land is a tarot-based one, which is about it's technically about colonization. I thought it was going to be about love, but it's about colonization through love. Anyway, it's a thing. And then, and also like I'm selling a trilogy that's focused on magical girls, because the goal is like as you play each game, you get better and better at RPG, so it gets more and more complex with each game. So that's what I'll be offering, and I'll be running Balikbayan at the demo. I hope to see you guys there. But you can always just reach out to me on Twitter. I'm online all the time.
All right, awesome. And how about you, Maria?
I'm also mostly on Twitter as Maria Mison, so it's MariaMison. And then on Itch.io, I'm Maria Bumbi, so MariaBumby.itch. And yeah, so most of the conversations in Twitter and the games that I'll be bringing to Session Zero are Archangel Dating Simulator, and which is like another tarot-based game, which is actually a hack of one of at the Jammies games.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a really good one though, because you get to date archangels. Like it's
like Gabriel,
it's super fun.
you know.
Yeah, you choose
whole
which
lot?
angel. So Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Michael, Archangel Jophiel. It's so good. It's like when you play it, it's like a K-drama, Japanese drama kind. It's so good. It's really good.
You're tackling themes that the angels represent. So, for example, if it's Gabriel, you're always having like communication issues, or like
if it's Michael, they're overprotective.
yeah, it's like all about like proving yourself, stuff like that. Or if it's like
Oh my
Azrael,
gosh.
you're like emo kid, stuff like yeah. So
Yeah,
The
we did the
goth one,
Azrael
yeah.
one. Yeah, because he's the Archangel of Death. It was so much fun. It was like it was super good.
realistic and stuff. So yeah, so it's like a tarot.
Tap into our collective Catholic educations, for
Yeah,
fun for once.
exactly. I actually have a game that's a novena, so yeah, it's like super pinky. So I'll be bringing that, the rich kids one, and the good, the bad, the uncanny, which is like it's like the only LARP I'm bringing, and it's more on, it's like based on a Chinese folktale about things like not being necessarily good or bad all the time. It's very
Okay.
it's a very pretty zine. It's like I'm like okay with not a lot of people seeing it on Itch because it's like very pretty. I'm like, yeah. So
Yeah, but Maria says that though, but she's so beloved on Twitter. You should see people like fangirling over her all the time. So, like...
Man, I want that version of Twitter where people are cool and
nice. Come to our side of Twitter. Hang out with us.
Can I jump into that part of Twitter?
Yeah, just hang out with us. Our side of Twitter is always like that. So.
All right, that's awesome. So yeah, like in case in case like for somehow you've just tuned in, again, this is the lead up, the road to Session Zero, an event that features, um, including these three fine ladies, local game designers from the Philippines. The first event of its kind, shining a spotlight on all locally made games. And yeah,
we want to thank in particular all of our chatters. Sorry about the babies.
Hi, babies.
Our chatters, including Oxys, Eric. Tradus a Gray actually rated us with a party of 6. So thank you so much
thank
for
you so
Tradus.
much.
Holy crap. You rated us once again at the very end of our stream. I'm not sure like why this keeps happening, but
it's
there you
because
go.
we live on opposite sides of the globe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just how it is. But thank you.
And of course, our chatters from the other platforms, including Mixer and Facebook, like Jukes and Shadzar, and a whole bunch of names which I am forgetting. I'm really sorry if I didn't mention you, but we love and appreciate you all the same.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Tune in again next week. Uh, same time on Saturday. It's the second. It's the second installment of this like roundtable discussion on, on featuring game designers for Session Zero. So we'll see you again though on Monday for Table Talk, and then on Wednesday for Visual Wednesdays, and then next Saturday hopefully.
Right.
So thank you so much.
We have a
Thank you,
channel to
everybody.
raid.
And you found one? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's actually an old friend. He was an early supporter of our channel. Haven't seen him around lately, but he is online now streaming video games. So we can go ahead and raid Kuroshiro Panda. I don't know if you remember him, Mark, but he was around.
It rings a bell when you would stream live D&D games. Yeah,
he's streaming Dying Light right now.
Nice. All right, so thank you so much, Bim. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you so much, Maria. We'll see you at the event, and see you around Twitter, I guess. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
We'll play out to the intro.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Woo. Yahoo!
That's